My name is Tami Barber with Aspirus Riverview Hospital. Well, thank you for taking the time in your busy holiday season for some education and entertainment with your aspiring women sisters. While you enjoy your appetizers, we'd like to start the evening with a little holiday entertainment by our own aspiring a cappella. The singers actually have another gig tonight, but of course they made time for us by coming here first before they dash off. So please join me in welcoming we have Peggy King, Rhonda L., Kathleen Orminsky, and Cindy Orzel, all part of our Aspirus family, and they are the aspiring a cappella.
Your Christmas shopping almost done, and maybe all of your other stuff, but you know, I always wonder from year to year, have I been good enough for Santa to actually bring me some presents? And judging by the looks of some of the ladies out here in the audience, I'm thinking we might have some naughty people out here too. So I do have a special song we want to sing just for those of you that might be a little bit on the naughty side. Oh, I just got a message from old Saint Nick way up in Christmas land, and he said that the toys for good girls and boys were being made as planned. There's a truck for little Billy and a jolly for Molly dear, but you ain't getting diddly squat 'cause you're really messed up this year. No, you ain't getting diddly squat 'cause you're really messed up this year. Oh, the winter fields are white with snow and the lights are shining bright, and the wee little heads tucked up in beds dream of sugar plums this night. You may dream of big red apples and candy canes so near, but you ain't getting diddly squat 'cause you're really messed up this year. No, you ain't getting diddly squat 'cause you're really messed up this year. You're in trouble, you ain't getting jack, and that's a fact. When your mother asked you to wash the dishes, why you said no, 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 and you would not pick up your socks. So it's que sera, sucker, ho, ho, ho. Oh, you know that Santa's watching you and he keeps a great big list. But when I tell him the things you do, he really will be mad. When he set up on his knee, he'll knock you on your ear. But you ain't getting still. pop that you really blew it big time. You're getting nothing for Christmas. Tough.
Lighter side of Christmas, but we want to do one more song for you, and there's a little story. Our leader Cindy, who really pushes us to learn a lot of really cool music technique. Last year we asked her if we could try one of our favorite songs, and she frankly told us no, we weren't ready to even try it. So we put it in our back pocket. We brought it out again in about the end of September and said, oh please, please Cindy, let us try it. And lo and behold, she let us try it, and we're going to do it for you now. And it's one of our favorites, and it's called Mary, Did You Know?
Mary, did you know your baby boy would give sight to a blind man? Mary, did you know your baby boy would save our sons and daughters? Did you know your baby boy has come to make you this child that you delivered will soon deliver you. Mary, did you know your baby boy would give sight to a blind man? Mary, did you know your baby boy would calm the storm with his hand? Did you know your baby boy has walked where angels trod? When you kissed your little baby, you've kissed the face of God. The blind will see, the deaf will hear, the dead live again. The lame will leap, the dumb will speak, the praises of the Lamb. Mary, did you know? Did you know? Mary, did you know? Mary, did you know? Your baby boy is Lord of all creation? Mary, did you know? Your baby boy will one day rule the nations? Did you know your baby boy is ever this sleeping child you're holding is the great I am. Mary, did you know? Mary, did you know?
Merry Christmas to you all. Unfortunately, we have to politely bug out for another engagement. So Merry Christmas, thanks for having us, and all things good in the new year for you.
Thank you so much, ladies. Next, I'm happy to introduce Keith Lupke of the Wisconsin Rapids Lions Club. You may have met Keith out in the hall. He will share with us his plans for your very generous donations of toys.
Merry Christmas.
Very good.
I didn't hear that. Merry Christmas. Much better, thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for coming tonight and supporting Toys for Tots. This is the 71st year that the Marine Corps Reserve Toys for Tots program is in existence. The Grand Rapids Lions, of which I'm a member, and I am the coordinator for Toys for Tots for Southwood County. And through your help by bringing a toy this evening, you have given Christmas to somebody that wouldn't have it. We have 1,010 kids in the school district in Southwood County that would not have Christmas if it were not for people like you who bring something and donate some funds at a point in time. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I'm sure when Christmas Eve or Christmas Day comes and these families who would have nothing, and I guarantee you it's there, a grandma who's raising 5 grandchildren, a grandmother raising a grandson living in a trailer, a camping trailer in the winter. Talk about being blessed. We are blessed if we can do something to help somebody. And through the partnership with the Southwood County Emerging Pantry Shelf, we are able to provide Christmas for those kids that would not have it. And so for your support, we are forever grateful, and our community is grateful. So thank you for the invite tonight, Aspiring Women. Tami, appreciate it, and thank you for every one of you who has done something for somebody else for Christmas. That's the name of what this Christmas season is about. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Keith, for coming out tonight and for all you do for all the kids in the community. Now on to dodging diabetes. Tonight you'll hear about the nationwide trends regarding diabetes, and here are just a few stats regarding our own dear state. The good news, Wisconsin had the 16th lowest rate of diabetes in the country in the last year at 10.3%. Yay! The bad news, that's up from 9.5% since 2009. So darn. More bad news, as we'll learn tonight, obesity is a key risk factor in developing type 2 diabetes, and since 2009, the percent of Wisconsin residents who are obese climbed from about 27% to nearly 32%. So what can be done? Well, fortunately, we have some experts here tonight to tell us. We have the entire staff of our Aspirus Riverview Diabetes and Nutrition Center here. They're registered dietitians and registered nurses who work with people who are recently diagnosed with diabetes or who have been managing diabetes for a long time. And they help them with the management of their disease, but they also help with pre-diabetes and preventing diabetes. Some of our speakers tonight, Carrie Benda is a registered dietitian with the group. She has a master's degree in nutrition and bachelor's degrees in dietetics and health promotion and wellness. She and her husband Steve have 3 children, a daughter who is in medical school, another who is a barista at Cravings and going to college next fall, and a son who is a high school senior who plans to be an engineer. Carrie was born and raised in Oshkosh, but has lived in this area for 27 years, and they love to travel and camp without electricity for 2 weeks at a time, just like the pioneers. Rebecca White is also a registered dietitian, and she is the coordinator of our Diabetes and Nutrition Center. She has a master's degree in nutrition science and has been with Aspirus Riverview for 18.5 years. Becky's married and has a son, Gunther, as well as her beloved dog, Sydney. And Becky says she loves her patients and her co-workers. That's why she brought them all along tonight. And we also have Gaynell Hoffmeister, and she is a registered nurse and also a certified diabetes educator, as well as Becky. And she has been with the Diabetes and Nutrition Program for 12 years and been at Aspires Riverview for about 18, she thinks. And she has 3 almost grown children and a hubby, and they live in Nakusa, and you can often see her biking from her home in Nakusa to work at the hospital here in Rapids. And we are also blessed to have Linda Race with us. And Linda is the retired coordinator of the program and probably still a bit of the leader of the bunch. Yeah, Becky says yes. She also still comes in and works casually in the department, still doing what she did for many, many years, helping people manage their diabetes. And she is not going to be presenting tonight, but she will certainly chime in at the Q&A and probably be the, the heckler, the designated heckler of her team. So I'll introduce now, I think Carrie's going to get us started and tell you a little about the appetizers that they chose for you tonight.
Thank you, Tami. So, one of the things that you'll find in your folder that was on your seat is the recipes for the appetizers and the dessert that you have this evening. So we'll start with the first, the crab cucumber bites. So the reason why that was chosen is it's a wonderful appetizer for you to bring to a party if you don't know if there's going to be things that are all that healthy. A lot of times it's one of those kind of things that you can kind of masquerade as looking like it's not that good for you, but it really is. If you read the nutrition information, there's only 16 calories and 1 gram of carbohydrates. So it's not going to influence your blood sugar in any way, and it really tastes good. It has some vegetables, it has some protein. It's a really good thing for stabilizing your blood sugar. And it looks festive. It's green with a little red in there, so it looks really pretty this time of year. So the second thing that I'm going to talk about is the cranberry salsa. So this is a recipe I stumbled upon about 6 years ago working for the health department with the Get Active grant, and I love it because it uses our local fruit, the cranberry. And at first I'm like, seriously? You're going to combine cilantro and a hot pepper and cranberries? That just sounds weird. Well, as you can attest, it actually is a really good combination. So it's a great thing to bring with you. It looks very festive this time of year. It doesn't have a lot of carbohydrates. One of the options that you have is to be able to put it over cream cheese. We didn't do that tonight, but sometimes you can do that as well. I like it just plain. And then the last thing is the surprise meringues. So if you've had these before, there is a lot of different options for the surprise meringue. We happen to choose the one where you're going to have some chocolate chips and a little bit of nuts in it. It doesn't have a lot of calories. One is only 35 calories, where if you look at a normal Christmas cookie, you're probably looking like 50 to 75 calories, so it's a little bit lower calorie. And the amount of carbs is only about 6 grams of carbs, where a lot of times a normal Christmas cookie is going to be 10 to 15 grams. So it's a nice choice that way. And in terms of versatility, we've done them where we use a little creme de menthe and the baby chocolate chips, or we've also done where you do almond extract in baby chocolate chips, so it's like a cherry chocolate chip. You could use lemon extract. You could do a lot of different things to switch them up. So it's a good versatile dessert for this time of year. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to Gaynell. She's one of our nurses, and I'm sorry, to Becky, I'm sorry. And she's going to get us started.
All right, hello. Thank you everybody for coming tonight. Can you hear me okay? All right. So tonight, what we're going to talk a little bit about is what is the difference between diabetes and pre-diabetes? What are the risk factors for diabetes? And how can you delay or prevent type 2 diabetes? If there's any good news in here, diabetes can be controlled. Pre-diabetes can actually be prevented. So what is diabetes? It's when blood glucose sugar levels are higher than normal, which we're going to explain kind of some of the lab values here in a few minutes. And it's also not enough insulin to allow your glucose, which is also your sugar, to enter cells to be used for energy. So when we eat, food breaks down into sugar. Some foods more than others. Carbohydrates, which most people in this room have probably heard that term before. Once the sugar gets to our blood, the only way it gets out of the blood and into the cell where the body uses it is if the insulin goes along and acts as the key to open up the door to let the sugar get out of the blood and get into the cell. So why does diabetes happen? Why does prediabetes happen? We don't know, okay? But we do know the risk factors, which Gaynell is going to talk about here, what makes people more susceptible to it, but we don't actually know why it happens. They theorize that sometimes they think excess weight blocks that receptor site and doesn't allow the insulin to get in to do its job. But I can't always say that's true because I've had people in my office that are very well within their ideal body weight and they still have diabetes, okay? So overall, diabetes and prediabetes, prevalence. In 2015, 30.3 million Americans, or 9.4% of the population had diabetes. Type 2 more common than type 1. Approximately 7.2 million of the 30.3 million with diabetes are undiagnosed, and that's the big thing. Most people don't have symptoms of diabetes until their blood sugars are running higher than 180 consistently. They feel fine, okay? New cases, 1.5 million Americans are diagnosed annually. Okay? Keeps us having a job, I guess, but. Prediabetes, in 2015, 84.1 million Americans 18 and older had prediabetes. And probably the big thing, 7th leading cause of death in the US. And again, a lot of people don't know they even have it. All right, where am I going here? Okay, cost, of course we know the cost is there. $327 billion total cost of diagnosed diabetes. $237 billion for direct medical costs, okay? So, different types. Type 1, type 2, in addition to the pre, which we're going to center in on tonight, and also gestational. So type 1 generally occurs from infancy. We used to say up to about 30 years of age, but we are seeing now people sometimes in their 40s and their 50s that are being diagnosed with type 1. Again, we don't know why it happens. They do theorize that sometimes they think we'll see sometimes type 1 kids will come in diagnosed during flu season, where they think it was a virus that attacked the pancreas and doesn't allow the pancreas to produce insulin. But again, they don't know for sure. Type 2, the most common form, most often diagnosed in adults, but we are seeing it in kids now because, and again, they theorize due to the overweight epidemic with our kids. Okay? Gestational, of course, happens during pregnancy and puts them at a greater risk for type 2 than later on in life. What is prediabetes? Prediabetes comes before type 2. So generally, most people that have pre will advance to type 2, but again, we do know that it can be prevented. And the blood glucose is higher than normal, but not yet at that diabetes level. And you can have prediabetes just like you can have diabetes and not even know it. Okay, so here's kind of the diagnostic criteria. So when you go in fasting for a blood sugar, meaning you fasted for about 10 to 12 hours, if your blood sugar, what they consider normal, I hate the word normal, but target for people without problems with their blood sugar would be less than 100, okay? If it's between 101 and 125, that's a diagnosis of pre. And if it's 126 or greater, that's a diagnosis of the diabetes, okay? And they do want 2 tests to confirm that on a fasting. They can also look at a random blood sugar. If you went in and you hadn't fasted, even if you had just eaten within an hour, if that blood sugar is above 200 and you've been complaining of symptoms of being thirsty, going to the bathroom, typical symptoms of high blood sugar, then that could also be a diagnosis. But again, they would want to run another test. Okay, so the pre is usually between the 100 to 125 on a fasting. But they can also use what's known as a hemoglobin A1C. And this is a 3-month average of your blood sugar. People say, how do you get a 3-month average of your blood sugar? Well, if people have diabetes and they're testing at home and they're using a meter, That's coming off plasma, and that's their blood sugar in that moment in time. If they draw off your red blood cells from your hemoglobin, this hangs on to sugar for about a 90-day average, and that's where they get this 3-month average. And it comes out as a percent, and that percent then correlates to an average blood sugar. So what they again consider normal is between about 4 to 5.6%. If it's 5.7 to 6.4%, that's what they term as pre-diabetes, and if it's 6.5 or greater, that's diabetes. And that 6.5% correlates, like I said, to an average blood sugar, which is about a 140 average, okay? Now I'm gonna hand it over to Gaynell.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the risk factors. So what is your fasting glucose? That's what we need to know. So when you go into the doctor, hold it closer. When you go into the doctor and they do some lab work, this is something that you can ask your doctor. What is my fasting glucose? Sometimes they do a lot of lab work and we don't always know what our results are all the time. So that's a good thing to ask your doctor. And when was it last checked? Get your blood glucose checked for prediabetes if you are. So if you're 45 or older and overweight, you're at a greater risk, so it should be checked. If you're 45 or older, not overweight, ask your doctor if you should be checked. You may have other risk factors, and we're going to talk about those in a minute. If you're less than 45, but overweight and at an increased risk for diabetes. And so the risk factors. Do you have a parent, a brother or a sister that has diabetes? You're going to be at a greater risk to develop diabetes. Are you of a certain ethnicity? So African Americans, Hispanic, Native Americans, Asian Americans, or Pacific Islanders, all at a greater risk to develop diabetes. If you had a baby weighing more than 9 pounds or had gestational diabetes, that again is a risk factor. If you have history of high blood pressure, if you have low HDL, which is your good cholesterol, and that would be 40 or lower, and then if you have high triglycerides, which would be 150 or higher. So I also had a couple other risk factors I think listed here that weren't mentioned. So if you're over 45, that is also a risk factor. If you're overweight, that's also a risk factor. And if you're inactive. So those are all risk factors for developing diabetes. What I usually tell people is try to concentrate on the things that you can do something about. I can't do anything about my ethnicity. I can't do anything about my family history. But I can do something about, am I active or not? I can do something about my weight. So those are things that I have some control over that, that I can do something about. So if you have prediabetes, what does it mean? Well, it means that you're at a greater risk to develop diabetes. It could come soon or sometime in the future. And you are also more likely to have heart disease or stroke. And then why prevent diabetes? Because as Becky was talking, diabetes is serious. It can cause a lot of health problems for us. It can do a lot of damage to our body. You'll be healthier if you can delay it or postpone it, or better yet, prevent it. And diabetes is common, but you can reduce your risk by working on your weight, losing weight. So now I'm going to hand it off to Carrie.
All right, So also in your folder, you have a quiz that will let you know if you're at risk for diabetes. So you don't have to take it right now, but just to let you know that you have that tool that you can go through later to see where you're at in that diabetes risk spectrum. So why, let's see here. Well, we mentioned that. So why would we want to delay or prevent, and what can we do? So she already said why we would want to, because it has a lot of negative side effects. So in terms of how you can, regular physical activity, and by that we mean being active almost every day. It doesn't mean you have to train for a 5K, you don't have to do a marathon, you just have to do something to be active. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more depth in a bit. So, and then losing weight. So when it comes to losing weight, I'll tell you exactly how much is recommended. So first of all, just to kind of show you why those two things are important. If we look at the diabetes prevention study, it showed that if we do participate in 30 minutes of some type of exercise that increases your heart rate, plus we lose somewhere between 5 and 10% of our body weight, we can reduce our risk of diabetes by over half. Now we're going to explore those numbers in a little bit more depth because they're a little bit more ambiguous. So if we're looking at what does 5 or 10% represent for you? So say you were a 150-pound person, it would be somewhere between 8 and 15 pounds. So the interesting thing is I've looked at a number of different studies, and some of them have actually shown that if you initially, when you find out that either you have prediabetes or you have diabetes, that if you lose either 10 pounds or up to 10% of your body weight, your risk of long-term complications decreases and stays down for up to 10 years after you've lost that initial chunk of weight. So it's very powerful if you take it seriously initially and you work on exercise and you work on losing some weight initially. So weight loss, oh my gosh, that's like, how on earth do you even get started? I don't know about you, but if we were to raise our hand for how many times we've tried to lose weight, I bet you we would all put our hands up if I say the over 5 times category, because I know I've tried over 5 times, and I'm not going to embarrass you and make you do that, but I know we all try to. So what do we do to try to actually put some teeth to trying to lose weight? So first of all, and this is really a bad time of year to talk about this, isn't it? The cut back on the empty calories. So when it comes to that, the empty calories, if you can cut back on them the majority of the time, someone once mentioned the 80-20 rule. So if 80% of the time you eat stuff that's really good for you and it has a lot of nutrients in it, and the other 20% of the time, maybe you eat a few things that have empty calories, you're probably in a good balance, and it's probably going to still help you lose weight, but you're not going to lose your mind because you can't eat anything you really like. Being active most of those days of the week, and we'll talk about exercise in a little bit more depth. Don't skip meals. So I know a lot of people have the philosophy that if I don't eat, I'm going to lose weight. My dad would do that all the time. He would not eat breakfast, he'd not eat lunch, and then he'd have this pile on his plate that was just huge for supper because he was starving. Our bodies don't operate well that way. They like to have carbohydrates spread throughout the day in even proportions. And then that regularly spaced, if you can keep about 4 to 6 hours in between each of those main meals. And when I say main meals, a lot of people think, okay, I grew up and we had, a big breakfast, we had a big lunch, and we had a big supper. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. It can just be one of your main meals, could be a half a sandwich and a cutie orange. It doesn't have to be huge, but just eating something 4 to 6 hours apart. And then one thing that really increases the rate of success, and you may not be a journaler, you may not be a record keeper, but if you can, it will bump up your chances of success when it comes to weight loss. And you can be techie, you can record on your phone, you can have a journal, you can come to the diabetes center and we can give you forms. Whatever you do to record what you eat, it's that accountability piece. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever recorded what you eat, I think twice about what I'm going to put in my mouth if I know I have to write it down. So it really does help. And an added accountability piece, if you have someone look at what you wrote down, it could be a friend, it could be anybody else. It's hard, it's like burying your soul, but it is really helpful. And then keeping track of daily physical activity. Some people will just write it on their calendar. Some people actually have a calendar on their phone and they'll keep track of it there. Just keeping track or setting appointments to exercise is very helpful in helping you follow through. And then the other thing that can be kind of painful, but keeping track of your weight, keeping a record. Because if you have to, maybe once or twice a week, you get your weight and you write it down and you can see that progress. For some reason, it's if you eat something and no one sees you eat it, it doesn't count. That kind of a mentality. If no one sees my weight, no one knows how much I weigh. But it's actually keeping you accountable to yourself. So measuring your weight at a regular interval and keeping record of it is very helpful for weight loss. So healthy eating essentials. So when it comes to the diabetic meal plan, if you would come in to see us, I would have something that looks a lot like what you see up there. And what it is a way to kind of think of what your plate should look like on more of a lunch or a supper type meal. So what you're going to aim for is about a quarter of your plate is going to be protein. And I'd like to say that God gave each of us our individual portion sizer, our palm. So if you're a tiny little person, you probably have a small palm. If you're this big man, you have this big palm. That's the amount of protein you should have, proportionate to you. So that amount, about the size of a deck of cards, is another way to put it. That's a couple of toast points. So the other quarter of your plate should be things that tend to be starchy. So it could be bread, it could be pasta, it could be rice, potato, sweet potato. If you're more adventurous, it could be couscous or quinoa or millet. Those types of things that are starchy. And if you're in Wisconsin, I say the other thing that you could do is in summer, it could be 2 cobs of sweet corn. That could be what your starchy thing is. And it's going to take up more room than that, but it's about a quarter of your calories probably. And then the other half of our plate, it's something that I've had to challenge myself to, and I don't know about you, but I don't always eat as many vegetables as I should. But if we can keep half of our plate being those non-starchy vegetables, those are going to fill you up. They're going to provide you with a variety of vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients, things that satisfy that inner need in your body for those nutrients and keep you healthy. So beside, kind of looking at that plate, eating less sugar. So sugar is something that has replaced fat for at least the last 50 to 60 years because we've tried to decrease fat in our food supply. So you're going to find more sugar in processed foods. Oh my goodness, it's Christmas, and then there's Easter, and then there's Halloween, and oh my goodness, you go to Walmart, you go anywhere, and how much candy do you see? It is everywhere in stacks and piles and heaps. So the food manufacturers are really trying to get us to, fuel or line their pockets. So if you can resist and stay away from sugar, it is really helpful. It doesn't mean you have to eat no sugar, but try to stay away from large quantities of it. And then that no trans fat, food manufacturers are starting to take it out more and more, but you still will find it on some labels. And avoid trans fat. It's a preferred fuel for our body to make bad cholesterol. So try to avoid that if you can. And then eating more of the low-fat dairy. Once you get into the higher fat dairy, one of the potential complications with diabetes, you're at a higher risk for a coronary event or a stroke. So you're wanting to stay away from high fat, high cholesterol, and the higher fat dairy will have that. Lower fat dairy will help you stay away from it. So more like string cheese, cottage cheese, farmer's cheese, those types of things. So the plate method we just talked about, and what I told you about doesn't include the dairy and the fruit. So I wanted to make sure you didn't get the impression that I was saying to avoid dairy and fruit. But those are things that should be as a regular part of your meals as well. And if you can try to keep the fruit, if you can try to keep it with those main meals and not use it as a snack, it tends to have a more stabilizing effect on our blood sugar long term. So not that fruit is bad, but try to have it either with your main meals or as a bedtime snack. Same thing kind of goes with dairy, unless it's cheese or cottage cheese, because then there's not going to be any carbs in those. So optimize your food choices. So when it comes to fruits, if you can avoid the juices. So if you know someone that's diabetic and they're having a low, what do you give them? Juice or soda. And it makes their blood sugar go straight up. If you eat whole fruit versus juice, the fiber in it tends to temper that raise in blood sugar. Instead of going straight up, it goes up more at an even keel. So avoid the juices and stick more with the fruits. Choose the low-carb vegetables, so the high-carb vegetables. It's a lot easier to go through those because there's not so many of them. So the high-carb vegetables would be like corn, peas, potato, sweet potato, and like the winter squash. But winter squash, it's not like winter squash is bad. You can actually have twice as much winter squash as you can potato or sweet potato. And then make at least half of your grains whole grains. And the food manufacturers are doing a lot better job about labeling which grains are whole these days. The fiber in the whole grains have more of a tempering effect on your blood sugar, and they have a lot more vitamins and phytonutrients in them. So eat a variety of lean or low-fat protein. So like the loin cut in beef or pork would be leaner, chicken, fish, if you like tofu, nut butters, those types of things. Those are good choices. And then the methods in which you cook them. So if you don't deep fry or if you don't pan fry in grease, if you bake or broil or grill or poach, those are good ways to prepare it that you're not adding a whole lot of extra fat and calories. And then choosing low-fat dairy products. So the ones that I had mentioned already, more like the mozzarella, the fresh mozzarella is wonderful. Part skim, cheeses, those are all perfect choices. Yogurt as well, I think I forgot that, sorry. Exercise is really interesting in that it helps to reduce blood sugar. And it's going to be your friend. And before you zone out because you're like, okay, she's going to tell me to go to the Y and work out for an hour, 3 times a week, that isn't what's necessary. It's kind of interesting because, as Becky had mentioned about insulin being the method to get blood sugar into your cells, exercise actually makes those cells, those muscle cells, a lot more sensitive to insulin. So it can do its job better if you're exercising. And your muscle cells actually take up that blood sugar. They're almost like a thirsty sponge after you exercise. So they're a lot more likely to get it out of your blood supply and into your muscles if you're moving. So the last part that I like, this New Zealand study was showing that you don't have to do the train for a marathon. You can just walk You could vacuum, you could put on a polka with your hubby, you know, you could do something for 10 minutes after each of your main meals. And the cool thing about that is it drives that blood sugar out of circulation into your muscles to be used. So it helps to bring your overall blood sugar down, or if you don't have diabetes or prediabetes, it helps keep that blood sugar in a healthy range. So, let's see here. So, in terms of, if you find you suspect that maybe you have diabetes or prediabetes, you've had your blood sugar tested, you find out you're in that range, where do you go for help? So at the diabetes center where the 4 of us work, we have 2 pre-diabetes classes that are offered. Actually, one class, it's offered twice a year, I should clarify that. So it's offered in the spring. We'll be having it the end of April. It will be all of April, won't it? Or May?
Starts beginning of April, doesn't it?
The beginning of April?
Yep.
We will be advertising for that.
Yes.
So, and then also in September, and I think it's, both of them are Thursdays, like all of the Thursdays in September and all of them in April, I think. So it's a 4-week class, and all you have to do is call to sign up for that. Or the Aging and Disability Resource Center has a 6-week class, and is there a cost for that one?
No, they just do a suggested donation of $10, and there's going to be 2 classes this year that I know of already. There's one in June, which I'm going to co-lead, and then they do another one in April as well.
Did everybody hear that? Because I can, yep, okay. So, and then, thank you. And then the Y also offers something that's a little bit more extensive. It's like taking a 3-credit course. It's 12 months, but it's very comprehensive. So, weight loss strategies. We're coming back to that. So, if you implement something on your own, if you're a firstborn, us firstborn people tend to like to do it by myself, you know, depending on what your personality is, ask yourself, kind of do some introspection. Do I do better if I start something on my own? Do I do better if I sign up for Weight Watchers, if I come to the diabetes center, if I participate in the hospital's Winding Your Way Down? Kind of look back at your history. At what times have you been most successful? If you've done something by yourself, or if you've done it more in a group. So then once you decide what you're going to do, planning ahead sets you up for success. Wasn't there a Saturday Night Live skit that said, when you fail to plan, you plan to fail? Or something, and they made this great big funny thing out of it, but it's really true. If you fail to plan, it's basically like you're planning to fail. You're setting yourself up for failure. So thinking through what you're going to eat, what you're going to buy for groceries for the week, making that plan ahead of time is going to make you much more likely to succeed in your weight loss goals. The other thing, and I kind of alluded to before, is actually scheduling appointments or scheduling times for exercise. Write it on your calendar, make an appointment with a friend, set a time to go walk around Wazeecha, you know, whatever it is. It could be at this time of year, make it a date to walk around Home Depot or Walmart about 4 times. I have actually seen people doing that, and it's a great idea, especially if you know someone that has balance issues. Works great. You can just push a cart and you just look all cool and no one knew. So whatever you have to do, just something to be active. Another thing that you have in your folder is a list of exercise opportunities that we have in the Wisconsin Rapids area. I don't think I realized how many opportunities there were until I put that list together. There's everything from, now that the Lincoln Pool is completed, there's, you can swim at the Lincoln Pool. You can actually get a quote-unquote membership here for the Mead. You could swim, use their exercise equipment here. If you're in Nakusa, the high school over there will let you use their equipment at different times. There's a yoga place, there's jazzercise, there's the Y, there's lots and lots of different ideas. Did you have a question?
They're actually on the table in the hall.
They're on the table in the hall. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, so, yeah. So, my bad. But if that's something, if you're looking for different ideas of things to do, that really helps. And then, as I mentioned before, keeping records. And if you're the kind of person that likes to get cool notebooks or cool journals, this is like the time in history where it's our heaven. Because there are little journals, there are all types of things where you can keep track. And I even looked at Walmart today because I wanted to keep track of for myself. And there was a fitness journal, and then there were the other types of journals. So I'm like, wow, that's really cool. So places where you can keep track of what you're doing, what your progress is, really helps you see what you're doing, sees your progress, and can be very motivating. So kind of summing up ways to dodge diabetes. So eating for health, choosing that plate as a way to eat healthier. And if you've got this whole plate thing down and you're already doing this, I challenge you. So I go to see a functional medicine doc, and she challenged me to eat veggies for breakfast. So if you already got it down, I challenge you to eat veggies for breakfast, because we don't do so well there. So eat for health at all meals. So does anybody wonder, anybody have any good ideas of how you eat veggies for breakfast? Yes?
Put it in your omelets.
Omelets, excellent. Yep. So the other thing that they suggested doing is if you get like broccoli slaw, you just saute that up and then you mix your eggs in with that. Who says you can't have chicken for breakfast? I made some really pretty ones. If you like purple and green together, it looks gorgeous if you take purple cabbage and red onion and you saute that with some kale, so that gives you your green, and then you push it to the outside of your pan and you put a couple of eggs in the middle. It looks gourmet. It's gorgeous, and it even tastes good. So it's like you eat with your eyes. So if you can, if I can challenge you to even step it up a notch and try to include veggies for breakfast, that's even better. Exercise regularly. It can be that 10 minutes after each main meal, or it could be 30 minutes at a time that you're walking. Whatever it is you like to do. It could be swimming, biking, whatever your body likes and whatever you like. It should be fun. And then the big thing is schedule those regular medical checkups to screen for your blood sugar. If you're one of those, okay, my oldest is a do-it-myself kind of kid. She's the one in medical school, go figure. But she actually went to Walmart and bought the $15 meter and her strips, and she checks her blood sugar every once in a while by herself, just because she wants to know. So if you're curious, it doesn't cost very much to get a little meter from Walmart and strips and check your blood sugar yourself to see where you're at. Don't not go to your doctor though. The doctor is really important. And we are at the end. So,
Okay.
Get up. Yep, get up.
Well, we'll get the whole crew up here. Linda too?
Yes, come on, Linda, get up.
I just had my Medicare physical for
And so you'll get to bombard them with all your questions about diabetes. I think they've probably heard them all, but we'll see.
I first have to say, I was thinking about when you said to keep a food diary.
Yes.
I could tell Alexa to keep it for me, right?
that's it. Yeah,
I got an Echo Dot. My son sent me that for Christmas because I wanted one. So I said, he goes, why do you want one, Mom? I said, because it's cool. I can tell it like to do my grocery list. I can tell it to remind me. And he goes, you need some friends, Mom, seriously. So, questions?
want to repeat. Yeah.
The question was with the risk factors, why is it when you have a baby greater than 9 pounds, does it put you at a greater risk? I think one thing is years ago, they didn't screen for gestational diabetes like they do today. So today, pregnant women are screened all the time for gestational diabetes. My son was 9 pounds, 1 ounce. And I do have some family history of type 2 diabetes, so I'm very aware of my risk factors. So that is one reason why. When those babies get to be bigger, it does put you at a greater risk. So, any other questions?
Does it put them at a greater risk also?
Okay.
Well, we got
Hang on
two
a second,
questions,
we got two
guys.
Let's go there first, then we'll come back to you. Go ahead. What was your question?
What is the difference, or is there a difference between the way natural sugars metabolize versus added sugars?
We'll let the dietitian take that one.
So the question was, is there a difference between natural sugars versus added sugars and how it's absorbed? When it's in the body, it does the same thing as far as our glucose is concerned, so it doesn't distinguish. Okay, there have been some studies that fructose, which is the primary sugar in fruit, can maybe slow down a little, but, and you know, I have to say, people are individual. We can't just say everybody responds the same, because Linda and I have seen it. We had a gentleman that was type 1, where they would always say, don't eat white bread, because white bread will spike your blood sugars 100 points. We actually saw it in him. I mean,
Yes.
he would come in, he was on an insulin pump, and we could see his blood sugars went up 100 points. But other people may not respond that way. But they do say that overall, no matter where it comes from, it does the same thing in the body.
Thank you.
And the other question?
Yes.
Does it make the baby have a higher risk factor?
For delivery? The baby's going to be at a higher risk later in life because of the family history. But I don't believe it puts the baby at a greater risk for developing.
What I think
as a
they
baby.
felt with gestational is that years back, and anybody's that my age is, that we had a lot of babies that were overweight. Well, were they overweight because the moms really had gestational diabetes and nobody knew about it because nobody screened? So therefore, if this mom delivered a baby and really had gestational diabetes, she's at risk, but she never knew that. Okay, now we screen, and so we try to keep those weights down because high weight babies are hard to deliver. If anybody's ever done that, you know, and so it made hard. Then when those babies were born, and they had high blood sugars, guess what we did when they were born? We cut off their sugar supply, didn't we? We cut the cord, and these babies' blood sugars just bottomed. Okay, that put that baby at risk because these babies' blood sugars drop below 40, and this can be a problem. So with gestational moms, we try to keep the blood sugars normal so that when you cut the cord, the baby's not going to notice that because he's used to producing a lot of insulin in response to a high blood sugar. But if he has a normal blood sugar from you, then his insulin response is normal, and cutting the cord would not be a big deal. Okay, so that was kind of the things that we noticed. So I think it's much better now that we just don't see as many. 7% of all pregnancies will have gestational diabetes. So that's pretty significant.
Criteria has changed over the years too for gestational diabetes.
Yes.
And
We'll
it's
hear first, then there.
more
Do you
common.
know the story on statins possibly causing diabetes?
Oh,
Okay.
I have no studies on that one.
Well, I've read, there are certain medicines that you take that can cause a rise in blood sugars, right? Glucosamine, chondroitin, right? How many take glucosamine, chondroitin? But it lets you exercise more, doesn't it? It lets you go so that your knees aren't killing you and you're more active. Okay. Can it cause a rise in blood sugars? Yes. But your increased exercise, and it's very small, minute amount, okay? So when you're exercising more, aren't you offsetting it? There are a lot of drugs, and they felt the same way with statins. You you kind of weigh your pros and cons when you take a drug, right? So if I'm going to take a statin, I'm trying to control my lipids, right? And my brother did the exact same thing and almost died from a cardiac arrest, you know, type of thing. So you got to weigh the pros and cons. Now again, the statin rise is very insignificant. My age at 65 is probably going to give you a better rise in a blood sugar for me than the statin is.
And I always tell patients too that if there's probably been one drug studied more than any drugs, it's the statins, because they've gotten a lot of bad press. And the statins, we're even seeing a lot of our doctors, internal medicine doctors, that are putting people on a statin with normal cholesterol levels, but that have diabetes, because it has shown to be very beneficial in helping to prevent a coronary event. Okay, same thing with blood pressure medicines. They will put them on a low-dose blood pressure medicine, even if their blood pressure is good, because it has helped with kidney protection. Go ahead.
My question is why at the age of 65 and older, if you have no other risk factors, you become high risk?
I'm 65, okay. Okay, my doctor asked me, he says, Linda, you know, he knows what I did for a living. Linda, should I check your hemoglobin A1C? Well, in talking to my brother, I said, my brother has both of my brothers have prediabetes. One's older, one's younger. I said, yeah, I think I should. My family history, and nobody had diabetes in my immediate family, but they both had prediabetes. So I did the test. And guess, the first time, no, I didn't have prediabetes. The second year I did. Okay? And I looked at myself, so I honestly looked at myself like Carrie said, look at yourself, and I thought, do I exercise? No. No, I don't. You know, and was my BMI ideal? No. So I thought, well, you know, I had to start exercising. So it had to do with my age because the metabolism can slow down, you know, that type of thing, and you don't exercise as much, you're not as active. I mean, I'm taking the elevator, I ain't taking those stairs. You know? My knees are killing me. So, you know, those are kind of the things that occur, I think, is as you get older, things change.
People gain weight as they age.
Yes. I'm happy with my BMI 26 instead. I'm thinking, hey, I'm old, I'm not getting down there. You know, and I told Becky today, I hated the thought of paying for my wine membership this year. Just hated it. So I pay myself $5 every time I go to the wine. My husband doesn't know that, but I give myself $5. I'm up to $30.
She didn't tell you after that? Then she goes through the McDonald's drive-thru.
No, I don't. But you know, those are little incentives that gave me because I paid for it and I thought, I'm going to get paid back. Gosh.
There you go.
But I had to make sure that it was worth my while.
Okay, now we have the question back there. Go ahead.
How do artificial sweeteners affect the blood sugar? Like stevia or sucralose?
They don't affect your blood sugar at all. But there's another factor that's kind of interesting. So you could have stevia or Splenda or any of those types of things, and they will have just a flat effect on your blood sugar. But one of the things that some of the studies are showing is that you have this microbiome, or this whole little factory of bacteria in your gut. And we want those. They help keep us healthy. And some of the artificial sweeteners tend to decrease, or they kind of hurt them. I haven't seen anything about stevia hurting your microbiome or your good bacteria, but some of the other ones, the daughter in med school, the nutrition professor had them all research different artificial sweeteners, and all of them tended to decrease the level of good bacteria in your gut. Except they didn't find anything with stevia, but who knows? You know, it seems like just about the time you think something's wonderful, you find some fly in the ointment. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other question.
Anybody else?
What about honey or agave nectar?
Honey or agave nectar, those are treated, or our body treats them the same way as they would sugar or maple syrup. All of those have the same amount of carbs. The only thing you might find in honey, which has nothing soever related to diabetes, is that if you get it locally, a lot of times you'll find it helps with your immune system because the flora and fauna in your local area helps challenge your immune cells to fight off like the histamines that normally would be produced from pollen. But that has nothing to do with diabetes. But yeah, yep.
Another question, I saw.
Somebody back
There's
here.
some lady way back there.
Okay.
Lady in the red.
Have anything to do with diabetes and getting diabetes to be more susceptible.
Alcohol can actually lower your blood sugar. But it does depend upon what kind too. So
They're an audience after my heart.
who's buying? Now that doesn't mean you should go out and start drinking to lower your blood sugars. But mixers can, I mean, if you're mixing it with orange juice or regular Coke, things like that, you will usually see a rise in the blood sugar then. But, and 1 drink per day for women and 2 for men.
Not fair,
Not more than that recommendation.
I have a question for you. I have a question for you. How many of you know your blood sugars when you go to the doctor? Do you ask? Good, good. Because my doctor and I had a disagreement. And, you know, and it's okay to disagree with your doctor, you know? So he said my A1C was 5.9. He said, oh, thank God it's not 6.0. And I went, I looked at him and I go, I have prediabetes. No, you don't. I said, yes, I do. You know, and I said, you're wrong. So I had to show him. But it's, you know, some labs give you different, because when you get that lab slip, they'll say 6.0 is in the normal range of the hemoglobin A1C. So that's just the way some labs go. But talk to him about it and, you know, ask him what the blood sugar is. And my doctor even just wrote a smiley face on my blood sugar, you know, last week. It was like, you know, good. So it's kind of like, I'm paying for these tests. And she said, and she did offer me, she said, you want the copies? I said, yes. How many, you keep your copies?
Yeah.
Good for you. I mean, this is the new generation. We know how to handle doctors, right?
You have to be your own advocate.
Yeah. There's one other question back here.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. In response to the lady that said she doesn't take the steps, I have replacement needs. I always take the steps. My rule to live by is do as much as you can for as long as you can.
Good job. I'm with you.
Go ahead.
I was thinking I was doing wonderful switching to, I drink Mountain Dew. I mean, I don't drink coffee, I never drank coffee until 2 weeks ago, my boyfriend made me sit down and drink coffee. Now I drink coffee. I bought one in the gas station the other day, and I was so proud of myself. There's no way Mountain Dew when I get up in the morning, and that's breakfast, that's all it is. So, my boyfriend drinks brisk iced tea, and I thought, well, I'm going to switch to brisk. He drinks the strawberry, I do the raspberry, and then I'm looking at it. The first ingredient is water, the second ingredient is high fructose corn syrup. Same exact thing as my Mountain Dew.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, the only difference is over here, I'm 170 calories, and over here I'm 70. And sugar over here is 19, and over here is 46. Oh my gosh. That is what wakes me up in the morning. I never drank coffee. So that was my goal.
So just a little FYI, for every 4 grams of sugar that you'll see on one of those soda labels, think of one of those little sugar cubes you used to see in the dish at the coffee shop. So if it has, let's just say we make the math easy, and let's just say there's 44 grams of carbohydrate in that or sugar in that soda. If you divide it by 4, that's 11 little sugar cubes. And I once saw this really effective wellness, I guess you would say commercial. It's like this guy crunching through 11 sugar cubes versus slamming down a Mountain Dew. If you think of it as like crunching through the sugar cubes, it just like nails on a chalkboard, yuck, you know? But you think nothing of slamming down a regular soda. So I'm really glad that you've noticed that. Coffee is a much better source of caffeine if you don't add all the sugar and stuff. You don't get a double mocha latte or whatever.
Well, I don't think I'd add 11 sugar cubes.
No, but the syrup that they add at the coffee shop,
Really?
they're really high. So just kind of, yeah. And the high fructose corn syrup, just as a sidebar, regular sugar gets broken down and can be used as an energy source immediately. High fructose corn syrup takes a different route. It goes straight to your liver and it actually gets turned into fat. So high fructose corn syrup is one of those things that they're starting to pull out of their food supply, and you should look for it and avoid it because it's one of those things that's implicated in fatty liver. So try to avoid high fructose corn syrup if you can.
How do we know how much is in something like this? I mean, because it says sugar 90 grams, but then there's also high fructose corn syrup.
Well, things in terms of labels, the first ingredient is what's in that product in the highest amount.
Right.
The second ingredient would be in the second highest amount. So if there's no other sweeteners after that, it's probably just high fructose corn syrup. I don't know what the other, I don't know if there's other sweeteners in there. No, then probably just that. So, yeah.
Another question? You talked about natural sugars and added sugars. Sometimes on labels you see where it says alcohol sugars. What is that?
Sugar alcohol.
Okay, so I always tell people think of a spectrum. If I have sugar at one end, that's 100% sugar. If I have the sugar subs like equal, Splenda, sweet and low, that's 0. If sugar alcohols are in the middle. So sugar is 4 calories per gram. Sugar alcohols are 2 calories per gram. So they're a lower sugar, lower calorie type sweetener that they'll use. They have nothing to do with alcohol per se. It's just a chemical structure similar to alcohol, so they call them the sugar alcohols. So they're usually the ones that end like in a YOL, uretol, xylitol, yeah.
I mean, sometimes it doesn't show what you just said, the xylitol and the uretol. It'll just say like natural sugars, and then it'll say alcohol sugars.
Sugar alcohols.
Sugar alcohols, rather.
Yep, yep. But it'll list in the ingredient which one they're using. Yeah.
Yeah.
But doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter which one, because they're all, right.
They're all sugars.
Yeah.
To some extent, if they're a lower sugar versus 100% sugar, but yep. Back.
I like to eat a lot of real food, and it's hard to know the carbs, the fiber, et cetera, because it doesn't have a label on it.
So different things you can do. One of the websites that I usually tell people, the CalorieKing.com is a nice website. You can get some information on that. Very easy to use. It'll pull up, you pull in the food you're looking for, it'll give you a food label. Other things you can do, like what she showed on there, is like if you're techie and you use like the Lose It app or the MyFitnessPal, you can go ahead and put your recipes in there. It'll break them down for you. You can use recipe analysis things on websites. Just pull it up. Some you pay for, some are free, but you can put in your recipes and it'll break down information for you.
Okay. Thank you all so much for your expertise and for sharing it with us tonight. I believe